I don't want to thank Paul Matero for inviting us here. I worked in law enforcement, public safety as a member of the Youth Gang Unit for 10 years, and I served as Assistant Safety Director in the city of Cleveland, specifically around gang intervention and prevention, and worked with several Muslim cultural-specific groups that deal with prevention and intervention. And I think President Obama attended a gang summit we had back in the early 90s in Chicago. And I was pleased to hear your conveyance about strategic communication. But many of us have been involved on the ground as practitioners dealing with that kind of work. And we found that we would like to make sure that we are engaged in that strategic communication with the administration because of the experience that we have. We found that, you know, in the prior administration, that there was difficulty there, even though there had been some communication and some relationships. What I like to see, and I think I can speak on behalf of the colleagues that I work with quite closely, is more emphasis on what you just said about those that are practitioners and experts in the field who have experience and can address that issue about what transforms and what creates the kind of mentality that leads to some of the things that we have to deal with today, not only in the United States, but throughout the world.
I think your point is a absolutely right one. And it does take a village. And you know, I've looked at these issues that beguile us as a nation, whether it be on terrorism or other issues. How do you make progress against some seemingly intractable problems? And it really does take work at the grassroots level, as well as at the very strategic level. But they need to be working in concert with one another as opposed to at odds. And I sort of equate it to, as we deal with issues of poverty or illiteracy, you need the Peace Corps approach, but you also need the World Bank approach. You need to have people who are gaining that practical experience and working with people so we understand and can make that progress on the ground. But we also need to have a strategic framework that we can ensure that we're marching together in the right direction. It is a tough challenge to try to bring that together, but the more people who are engaged in it at that grassroots level, the people who have that experience and can then transition from maybe a law enforcement career to a community engagement career or something that is going to be working with the community, I think we need more of that cross-fertilization because it enriches, I think, all of us to gain that experience. Yes, right here.
Chloe Breyer, the Interfaith Center of New York and St. Mary's Episcopal Church. Thank you so much for your comments underscoring the importance of interfaith relations, also for your work to close Guantanamo. Several of us from many faith traditions served at Ground Zero after 9/11 with the Red Cross doing chaplaincy work. Some of us, I would say, are disappointed with the way our elected officials have turned down the opportunity to have a trial for one of the people who is responsible, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. And my question to you is, if what some perceive as a not in my backyard scenario, or at least, and cowardly otherwise, might be turned around, is it possible we might get that trial back here in New York City?
Yes, clearly this is an issue that the people here in the city feel very strongly about. And frequently they have very different views on the issue about whether or not Khalid Sheikh Mohammed should be tried in the city. There is an obvious need to take into account a number of different factors as far as support from the local community for this, the funding requirements. There are dependencies that will determine when that trial is going to start and where it's going to start. The important thing to keep in mind is that we need to bring these people to justice. That's what this country is all about. It was such a heinous act of murder on that day where nearly 3,000 people died that we need to bring Khalid Sheikh Mohammed to justice in an American court. There are constitutional requirements as far as venue is concerned and where he can be tried, whether it be here in New York, Pennsylvania, or Virginia. And the Southern District of New York has had, tremendous experience and success in trying these terrorists. And the administration, the Attorney General, and others are trying to push this forward as best we can. But again, the dependencies are there. Where is the funding going to come from in order to provide the necessary security? We need non-obstructionism from certain elements within the government in order to move forward on this. These are very difficult challenges, and people have frequently polar opposite views on this and feel very, very strongly about the issue about whether or not Khalid Sheikh Mohammed should be tried in Article 3 court or under military commission. I think we probably all have our own views on that, as well as where the venue should be. We're trying to work our way through it, and there are some stiff winds that are blowing that are delaying bringing this man to justice. That's the important thing. And I've had extensive conversations with people within the government, also, here in New York, and I'm hoping that this is going to be resolved for the sake of the victims and their families of the 9/11 tragedy. Yes, over here. Over here, and then we'll go over here.
Hi, thank you for coming. My name is Dalia Mahmoud with the Muslim Public Affairs Council of New York City. My question, I really appreciate what you said in recognizing that Muslim Americans have been victims of prejudice and hate, those who have hate in their heart. And oftentimes that's very much fueled by perceptions in the media and by, the terminology such as, war on terror and Islamic terrorism and so forth. Is there anything specifically that is being discussed currently in terms of revising that type of language and the use of it by our administration?
I think, as I mentioned in my remarks, we're trying to be very careful and precise in our use of language, because I think the language we use and the images we project really do have resonance. That's why I don't use the term jihadists to refer to terrorists. It gives them the religious legitimacy that they so desperately seek, but I ain't going to give it to them. They want that status of a sovereign state from the standpoint of enemy combatant. I believe that they should be treated as the miscreant murderers that they are. They're trying to gain that status and that image so they can rally additional support. That's why I think, and I understand the reasoning behind, after 9/11, the term global war on terrorism. It tried to convey that concept of we are opposed to this as a nation, and we indeed are. And it's not that that was an incorrect term. I just don't think it was as precise as it needs to be. That's why, being precise, saying we're at war with Al-Qaeda, we're at war with these terrorist groups. But I don't want our language to then lead to individuals seeing that as an extension, or then extending that to communities that frequently are represented by those terrorist attacks. They take place in Pakistan. 99.9% of the people in Pakistan abhor those attacks. However, it is that vocal, violent minority that gains the attention of the press. And whenever anything happens, the press goes right toward it in the media. And I think too frequently, the press will go with people who have that strident view, that will adopt a position on the radical fringe because that's what's going to make news. And I think that unfortunately fuels the fires. And I will give my life to make sure that the fourth estate of this country and the freedom of speech is protected and enhanced. That doesn't mean, though, that everybody who gets on a camera speaks responsibly. And that's why, and I have been forceful recently, decrying any type of misrepresentations that are put out in the press, including by politicians, that I do not accurately reflect what is happening in this country. We should not be instilling more fear in the country. Over here.
Thank you so much. My question is possible for the administration under Mr. Obama to think about how we can educate the people who are talking about religion, all of them, by having a channel of TV or radio or whatever. And the government should support this idea financially because it will help and it will cost less than the war. I have already 2 big books, each one about 1,000 pages, or less, the other one. And I was requested this during the time